Utah has a chance to land one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2026. Can they do it? We'll tell you about him and if Utah has a shot on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel today. My name is Jason Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by KSL Sports' Alex Napoles. Alex, we are going to talk about the 2025 recruiting class. Now, the dominoes have kind of fallen, including a really big one last week, a late one, and just kind of an overview of that class. Also want to talk about Utah in the Final Four one day. We're just getting off the Final Four too, so that's something that's big as well. Alex, though, I want to start with a major quarterback that Utah is trying to land. It's Oscar Rios. He is a 4-star quarterback. He is the 10th ranked quarterback in the class of 2026, according to 24/7 player rating, 6'3", 175. He has a visit lined up out to Utah, who's a former Purdue QB, decommitted from the Boilermakers, and now could be coming to Utah. His visit will be later in June, I believe, but this is massive that Utah is one of the top 10 quarterbacks considering them in the 26 class.
I think anytime you're able to bring in a top 20 player at any position, I think it bodes well for you and your program. I think it says a lot about you and your program. And so the fact that Utah is able to get Rios on a visit to come in and see the program, see the campus, etc. I think that bodes well for your program. And now it's a question of whether or not Utah has that possibility to land them.
It's competitive. Oklahoma State will get the first visit April 25th. Interesting gap in his visits, but obviously school, other responsibilities, maybe another sport athlete too. Oklahoma State is the first visit April 25th. Utah's the second June 6th. Then it'll be Arizona June 13th with Colorado June 20th. But that is really interesting that you have one of the top quarterbacks in the country, a top 10 guy, and he's really only looking at so far Big 12 schools at this point. That is absolutely huge, and maybe does want to stay. You know, some of these recruits, I'm curious. I have never spoken to Oscar, obviously, but I do wonder how many of these guys are like, hey, maybe I don't want to go over and play in the Big Ten if I go to like a USC and then I'm traveling all the way over to Rutgers. Sure, if you go to Utah, you may have to go to UCF, but outside of that, sure, an occasional trip to West Virginia. It's a big difference between going from Utah to Kansas from some of those Big Ten schools you go to USC, UCLA. So I think that could be a recruiting advantage that Utah has moving forward, Alex, honestly, with even the California guys.
Absolutely. Especially when you look at guys from, specifically in his case, who is from the West Coast, players that are playing on this side of the country. And, I think depending on, what the situation looks like, there's always going to want to be a want and a need to stay close to familial ties and stay close to a place where you can kind of be close to home. Mm-hmm. And so if you're having to travel all the way to, if you commit to UCLA, you're having to go play in Rutgers. Right? It makes it difficult for a family member to travel unless you have family closer to that part of the country. But it does make it, these long trips and these long travels. I feel like it does potentially play a role in some players' recruitments because it is a long way to go, and it's kind of hard to do that consistently in today's day and age.
It absolutely is, and that'll be something interesting to monitor with recruiting classes moving forward. But Utah will have Rios in for a visit, so what would they be getting in a guy like Rios? Well, you turn on the tape, the accuracy stands out right away. The touch on passes downfield, I was incredibly impressed with. There are several throws on there where I'm like, that is a college quarterback like level throw. Like you have to make that type of throw in college. It's not just like some guys you watch their tape and it's like, hey, my team's just more talented than everyone. My guys are wide open. I got all the time in the world to throw. Rios, and I will say his offensive line held up well, so I'd want to see him more under duress potentially. But based on what we've seen so far, he's a guy who can throw on the move, really good pocket presence. He is decently mobile too, can make the throws on the move, can get ahead and scramble for some yards, and willing to be a quarterback in the run game. Only 175 right now too. So eventually, if it was going to be a guy at Utah, I think you need to add weight, but he's 2026, only a junior. So definitely got some time too, but guy who leads his receivers downfield with passes, just pretty good arm. And the accuracy, once again, is the biggest thing that I was impressed with. So many tight windows, whether it's on the sideline or over the middle of the field where defensive backs are, especially like on 20 plus yards, you got to fit it in. It's a tight window. Rios was able to do it. his ability to consistently make throws like that is what has me hopeful that he will be a Utah Ute someday.
And I think for me, what stands out to him is his potential to be a dual threat quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at now with, I mean, obviously we've still yet to see Jason Beck's offense in action yet, but we do,
Based
you
on
do
last
look.
year, I think they're going to run the ball a little bit with the quarterbacks.
Exactly.
Call me crazy.
Based on what we've seen from Devin Dampier and what he did
Mhm.
at Mexico, right? It seems like Beck wants a guy and likes guys who has that dual threat ability. You look at Rios right now, and it seems like he has a really good pocket presence, a very good vision as a pocket passer. But if you can add a little bit more of a dual threat, a little bit more of a guy who has that awareness of when to tuck and run, when to be able to scramble and make plays, kind of similarly to what we saw Dampier last season with New Mexico. I think that's probably what Utah's looking at when it comes to Rios, and I think that's probably the way you're going to want to go when you look at your quarterback recruits while Jason Beck is in charge.
Speaking of Jason Beck and quarterbacks, there's a very encouraging trend going on right now, and it's the future of the Utah quarterback position. The hype with Jason Beck is already incredibly high. The third best offense or fourth best in a yards per game basis with New Mexico last year. What he helped Dampier do, Devin Dampier is a really good player, but that was a combination. Dampier's skill set paired with Jason Beck's ability to maximize his quarterback is something that has me incredibly excited about the future of the Utah quarterback position. And apparently I'm not the only one, because recruits seem to be taking notice. Utah made the change, right, to Jason Beck. Wyatt Becker could have decommitted. The quarterback who's now on Utah's spring roster early, he could have left. He was impressed. He stuck around. He's already here. That's a quarterback in the 25 class. Without even mentioning Dampier, guy who's already here. So feel good about the present of the quarterback room. Rios is a guy in 2026 that Utah has a chance to land. The fact that they're getting a visit with a top 10 quarterback when you have an offensive coordinator who hasn't even been at Utah yet in terms of games, but already generating enough excitement where, hey, I'll take a visit. It has me incredibly excited. There's also the Thaddeus Thatcher, 2027 guy already committed, locked in. You get a quarterback with that high of potential this early. And also Isaac Wilson is still here. What does Isaac Wilson look like long-term? I don't know, but there's still a 4-star quarterback sitting on this Utah roster. Alex, this feels like as bright of a future as I've seen for a Utah quarterback room in as long as I can remember.
Absolutely. Now the question is, can they stay healthy? Will they stay healthy throughout the course of the season?
Will they stay? I mean,
and will they stay?
That's the biggest thing, honestly.
There you go. That's probably one of the next points I wanted to bring up is in today's day and age of college athletics, you just don't know what your roster is going to look like from one year to the next. You don't know what kind of security and what kind of stability you have. And so I think even if Utah doesn't have the possibility to land Rios, maybe in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, if build a good relationship, right? Because you never know what's going to happen down the road. Build a good relationship, build good impressions, because if Rios decides to go to Oklahoma State and it doesn't work out for him, he enters the transfer portal. You already have that advantage. If you've already made a good impression and built a good relationship with him while he was in the high school recruiting, who knows what can happen down the line when he's in the portal in 2-3 years. And that's just the landscape of college athletics and what we're in right now.
And 1000% is the landscape. I have never felt less confident than ever in players staying with their original commitment, because that's just the track record. I mean, we just had Jerome Miles silently committed to Utah. Then he's at Ole Miss. Then he went to USC, and he's going to end up at A&M, like all in like a calendar year or maybe a little more than that. Like, it's insane, the cycle and how quickly things change. And it's not just the players too. Obviously the NIL offers differ, so lots of things can happen. So if you asked me like 5 years ago, hey, that 2027 quarterback that committed to Utah, like, is he going to come to Utah? I'd be like, yeah, why would he not come to Utah? He's already committed there. Now it's like, and this is nothing about Thatcher even, it's just like the current world of college sports is like, yeah, I think he'll come to Utah. He's committed here. But would I be shocked at all if he changed his mind? No, it's a long time away. And the ever-changing world of college athletics is, like I mentioned, ever-changing. So a lot can happen, but really exciting that Utah has a guy like Rios who is going to take a visit with them in June. It'll be a big visit for this team. We'll see what kind of an impression Jason Beck can make on the talented quarterback. Jason Beck was not really involved in the 2025 recruiting class, but he is going to try to get the best out of this class. And there was some recent shakeup with the 25 class last week that led to us kind of reevaluating that group. And now that we can just take a step back and say, hey, the dominoes have pretty much fallen, how does this class stack up against some of the other ones Utah's had? That's what we're going to be discussing in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Sure, March Madness is over now, but right now. New customer get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella runs, even who's cutting down the nets. I love FanDuel because FanDuel allows me to pick my favorites. I've got my eyes on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easier than ever to get access to the spreads, totals, and game props. It's also staying in the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on. It's also that easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can visit FanDuel.com and get in on the sports action all season long. And what season am I talking about? Well, yes, college basketball is done. NBA is heating up. This is when it gets the best time of year. We're going to get the playoffs starting in a few weeks too, and I cannot wait to see how the playoffs shake out. Also, when you're talking about FanDuel, you got NHL, you got MLB. We got a while till we get football back, of course, but FanDuel has you covered. If you're looking to get on the action, props, player bets, everything, FanDuel has you covered. Head over to FanDuel.com today. Alex, there was a big shakeup last week when we saw one of the top players in the class of 2026, Newsy. We were going to call him Juice on this show, the former, not the Stanford. He was Stanford, but he was Westlake before, pass rusher out of Westlake. He was committed to Stanford. He decommitted, and now he's going to end up at BYU. So that caused a little bit of a shakeup in the 25 recruiting class. I talked a little bit last week about what that means that another guy goes to BYU. But Alex, as we focus on the 2025 class, like as we sit and evaluate, like what do I think about this class as a whole? A class that has 25 commits, that has 1 4-star and the other 22 3-stars in it. And my thoughts are, I really like this group. We're going to give grades on it in a moment, but I think this class has an elite linebacker duo, several skill position talent players I like, really promising quarterbacks, a young secondary, and some tough players in the trenches. I think it's a really solid to really good class that Utah's bringing in.
I couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. I think there's a lot of players, right, who you look at. And again, I think Utah's done a really, really phenomenal job of developing talent, of getting the best out of guys who weren't necessarily, near the top of other teams' recruiting lists, and players who possibly didn't get a second look. And now they're at Utah, they get that second look and they get that opportunity to really grow. And then I've mentioned it time and time again with you, JT. I think that's just a testament of the coaching staff. I think that's a testament of Kyle Whittingham and his guys. They do a really good job of finding the diamonds in the rough and putting a different light on them and bringing them up and developing them really well. So even if it's not the shiniest of classes to ever stand out on paper, I still believe that there's a lot of faith that Utah coaching staff can get the best out of these guys.
That right there, what you mentioned, not shiny, is why I go really good. But when it comes to grading, I couldn't give it an A because I don't know if there is a superstar here. Like, I don't know if we'll get a Lander Barton. I just mentioned how much I love the linebackers. Cyrus, Polu, Kristen Thatcher. I think those guys could be multiple year starters and really good players for Utah. But I don't know in this group they brought in, who's going to be the guy that shocks us and rises to the top and ends up going in the first two rounds of the NFL draft. I don't know if I see that. I see really good, talented players all over this, but Utah really could have used a game-changing wide receiver. Jerome Miles would have made this an A. Utah wasn't able to land him. There are obviously a lot of reasons in that, as we talked about earlier, and with all the other schools that Miles ended up at. But that's the kind of player I think would have been nice to add. That instant impact guy as a freshman too. A couple of these teams have had that have been really successful. You get that one guy who comes in as a star early, Clark Phillips, Lander Barton, to name a few, Smith Snowden even. I don't know. You have 1 4-star in this class in Polu. I think he'll start as a backup this year just because Utah's really good at linebacker, or pretty good to me, I'll say. But that's the thing that holds it back from being an A. That's why I go B+. A lot of really good. I just don't know if there will be any all-time great Utah players. And all of you, if you recruits are listening, please prove me wrong. Please go be the best dang you can be at your position. But when I evaluate these guys, like a lot of them, don't know if any of them will be like, oh yeah, that was one of the best Utes of the last decade.
Yeah, and I think, there's throughout the course of the classes the last couple of years, there's always been one guy that has had kind of a name to him and has had a little bit of recognition to him. And, you clearly point at him and say, this guy's going to be a top player. You mentioned Clark Phillips, that landing him was absolutely huge. And then, but you look at this class and I think if we're going to grade it, if we're going to put a letter to it, I'll give it a B- because I do think that
Ooh.
I do think that this one does lack that big name. It does
It
lack
does.
that big one guy who immediately is going to come in and make a big difference. And like you mentioned, we hope the hope is, and I think a lot of the fans are hoping that someone can come in and prove that wrong,
Yes.
and immediately step up and become a big impact player from day one. But I think more so this recruiting class, while it is going to be very good, I think it's more importantly you're looking at the transfer class, the transfer recruiting class that Utah's
Mhm.
brought in to make the difference this season, rather than the high schoolers that are now going to be playing as incoming freshmen, more so to make that impact.
Yeah, it feels like it will be more of a transfer heavy group that makes that impact, but still a really good class. And you still gave it a B, still one we like a lot. So and what I will say as well, too, like if we look at this class and go, okay, well, how is Utah doing against Big 12 competition? Good. Utah had the 40th ranked class, which is fourth in the Big 12, but Kansas State was only at 35. So that was how small the separation is between the other Big 12 schools. BYU wasn't even in the top 50. So there are other schools that are still clearly lacking. Utah putting themselves in a good position compared to the other teams. Obviously, Utah's goal, though, is to get back to being, hey, when they were winning Pac-12 titles, they were top 20 program, had a top 20 recruiting class even, or at least a top 25. I'm trying to remember where that one ended up exactly, in which they landed Snowden, Fano, at the time Hunter Clegg, who's now, of course, BYU, but like getting a class that can be that level again. That's what Utah's trying to be. But once again, we both really like this class. You get guys like Polu and Thatcher I mentioned at the linebacker spot. I think those guys could start next to each other in 2 to 3 years. Daniel Bray is a really talented running back. You get guys like Carson Kafusi. I've already seen a couple people raving about him in spring ball. Wyatt Becker, Moose Bingham, one of the people I respect the most when it comes to evaluating talent. He's been really high on Becker for a very long time. You get Bird Ficklin's another kind of intriguing QB prospect. What will he grow into? Bear Tenney, the athletic 6'5" tight end. I think he's got a chance to be something special. Jason Stokes, a cornerback, is another guy that I think has potential. Dylan Curtis, the kicker. JJ Buchanan might end up being the best player in this entire group too. You get another guy like Shelton Fuller, who I'm a huge fan of. Nick Hallock, an offensive tackle from Bingham, who I've liked his game for a while too. And Mays is another guy, the cornerback, that I think could be really good. There is a lot of players in this class, Alex, that I look at, and once again, I just go, these guys are going to contribute to Utah winning games, which is why I did give it a B+.
Absolutely. And like we mentioned, you don't need to have the big star name. You don't need to be the biggest name. And honestly, sometimes you don't even have to have the most stars, right? It's going to come down to effort and attitude. And there's a lot of guys that you just mentioned in the list off JT that I do think have a lot of potential to grow and become good difference makers for Utah, right? I think Bear, the Lone Peak tight end, he's a guy that we've seen up and close personal here in the state of Utah. And so I think he has a lot of talents and a lot of skill sets to potentially be a really, really solid tight end for this Utah team. And so it's just going to take time and development to see what these guys will really be able to contribute.
It will. One thing that's interesting, Alex, as I mentioned, Utah 40th right now. I do wonder what the ceiling is for Utah. Like in the NIL era, will we ever see them have a top 25 class again? I don't know if we will. I think we could see them get a top 30 class again, but it's tough. I mean, for you, like, do you think Utah will ever crack the top 20, 25? Like, where would you put the ceiling at? I think it's somewhere in between 30 and 25, maybe 20, but that seems like an uphill battle to me right now.
And see, I think you're going a little bit higher than me. When I look at it, I would probably say 35, 40 within that range, kind of similar to where they are now, until possibly a little bit changes in the NIL situation, until whether that's more donations, whether that's more regulations, whether that's more more of the NCAA branch coming in and putting some rules on what you can and can't do within the NIL landscape of things. But I think 35, 40, I think that's a pretty solid number. And if sometimes they can get in one of those guys that do really stand out, like a Clark Phillips, then potentially you can bump that up a little bit higher to that 25 range. But the future of college athletics is just so up in limbo right now that I think 30 to 40 would be, 35 to 40 would be a good range.
And you said 30, 40 be a good number. You know what else is a good number? 4. The Final Four. That's where Utah is one day hoping to get back to as a basketball program. And we're going to tell you when the next time Utah is going to do it in a moment. Alex Napoles is back with me here. Alex, when will Utah basketball be back in the Final Four? They've made 4 Final Fours as a program. Can you guess the most recent ones? And you want to guess like a couple of the years when they happened? Hint,
Oh man,
it was before you and I were born.
it was before we were born. It obviously is during that Majerus time. It was 80. Was it 84? JT.
That one was 98. Actually, I will say.
Okay,
That one was 98. So that one was a little more recent. You may have been born then.
I was not yet.
You were not, yeah. So that one, then you have 66, 61, 44. So the question then becomes, when will we see Utah do it again? We just wrapped up the Final Four. It's incredibly hard to make it there. Ask BYU. They've never done it. Sorry, Cougar fans. It's just a fact. Like, it's incredibly difficult to make it to the Final Four. When will Utah do it? I was thinking about this earlier today. Do I want to go 30 years? Do I want to go way far off? I don't know. Maybe I'm drinking the Alex Jensen Kool-Aid. I was just watching his press conference back again. I really like the statement. And I just think it's boring to say 20 years. I believe, I talked myself into it earlier today, Utah will make a Final Four in the next 10 years. Sometime in the next 10 years, the overall investment in this athletic program. And all I need to do to be right on this is one time in the next 10 years, they just have to get there once. It'll be the right blend of talent. This just feels like the start of something special. And I think one time in the next 10 years, I'll at least say 10 to 15. That's what I was going back and forth on earlier. I think Utah cracks it with the right formula. What do you think of that?
I do think that there is.
I like that I left you speechless, by the way. I appreciate it. I was going for bold.
No, you're. I like your enthusiasm, man. I love your enthusiasm, and I think that there's, with how much, again, we're talking about the change in college athletics and how different things are than it even was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. There's definitely a lot quicker of an opportunity for you to turn things around, right? You look at, not to compare apples to oranges, but you look at the Big 12 football season this last year, and you look at a team like, in Arizona, who was a top team in the Pac-12, first year, and now the Big 12, some turnover in the roster, and they end up having a pretty tough season. You look at even in Oklahoma State, who last season did pretty well in the Big 12, right? They went to the championship game, no less. And then they come back and they don't even win a single conference game. That's how quickly things can change in this day and age in college athletics. Now you look at it from a basketball perspective, and look, BYU already had a good roster heading into the season under Kevin Young, but I think Kevin Young just kind of took that to a different level. And so now if Utah can build a foundation where you bring in good talent and you bring in the right mix of guys who have the right attitude and the right abilities and the right, can play right under this Alex Jensen system, then I do think that things can quickly turn around for you if you use the transfer portal right, if you use your recruitment right. And so I think, 10 years, it's soon, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility considering where we are today in college athletics.
All it takes is a couple of the right additions. And some of you may be listening and saying, hey, JT, we just saw the top 4 teams in the country, the 1 seeds, make up the Final Four. Like, how is Utah going to break in? And all I would say was this. What happened the year before when NC State made a run? I know we are so reactionary and so like, is this the end of upsets and all the things like that? I don't think we'll see as many upsets as we saw in the past because of the way the NIL and everything structures. But they will still absolutely happen. And the one thing I know for sure, Alex, is no matter what level of basketball you have, if you have the ability to evaluate talent at a high level, coach those guys up and bring in that right blend of talent too, you can go very far in this tournament. Alex Jensen absolutely, to me, is a guy who has the chance to do that with this Utah team. All they got to do is make it once. I really do think this team has a chance to get there sometime because of the faith I have in Alex Jensen and also just how wild the NCAA tournament is. We see this all the time from teams where they make a run. This will probably happen sometime again where we have all the 1 seeds, but there is going to be in the near future a 3, a 4, whatever it was. Oh, when UConn won it a couple years ago, they were not a 1 seed. They were last year a 1 seed, but the year before that, they came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. Not nowhere, but they came on strong towards the end of the year. I just don't think, Alex, like this is it. We're never going to see upsets again. And that's part of the reason I'm picking Utah to eventually do this.
No, I'm not buying the talk. I know I know Stephen A. Smith and ESPN the other day were saying that college basketball has completely changed and it's the end of the Cinderellas and yada yada yada. But I'm not buying it. I do think that this year, the one seeds are obviously by far the best teams in college basketball, right? Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. They are by far the best teams, but you're going to get to a point where it will return to parity due to the transfer portal, due to NIL, and due to the landscape that we're in there. I think that the talent will be more distributed as we go down the lines and as we get further down into what is now this look of college athletics. And at the end of the day, I think for you, looking at it from a Utah perspective and a local perspective, when you look at Utah basketball, I think the first thing you have to do is just make sure that you're consistently making the tournament. Get to a point where you can consistently be competitive in the Big 12. Get to a point where you can consistently be competitive enough to consistently make the tournament. Because once you make the tournament, it's anything that and everything that you thought, you throw it out the window, because it's a different beast. It's a different animal. It's a whole different environment. And so you just give yourself an opportunity to be at the tournament, to then allow yourself to kind of give yourself another stepping stone and see what you can do with that.
That's what Utah will try to do. What would you go? Like Utah next Final Four? Would you go 20 years? Do you think we'll see it in 30? What would you say?
I'm giving it hopefully in my lifetime, and we'll say 15 years. We'll say 15 years for the sake of the conversation.
We'll see who ends up being closer. Alex, always appreciate you making the time to come on. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
Absolutely. You can find me online at Napoles Alex. That is my handle on all social medias. And then you can also find all of our local coverage at KSL Sports.
That's going to do it for our show. Alex, appreciate you stopping on.
Thanks for the invite, man. Always a pleasure.
We'll be back with you tomorrow talking the latest in Utah football and Utah athletics. Hope you'll join us then.